is newer always better? Well, let's find out in today's comparison. Hey guys, Omar here from C4 Tech, and today we are going to be comparing the newly launched Realme X3 SuperZoom against Realme's first ever flagship device, the X2 Pro. So if you do end up finding this video useful, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Let's now get started. With both phones being manufactured by the same company, there are bound to be some design similarities. That being said, the off-center Realme branding on the X2 Pro was a hotly debated design choice. Some people liked it. Me personally, I was never a big fan of it. Now, Realme did come out with a master edition of the X2 Pro. It did away with the gradient pattern and instead introduced two new finishes, concrete and red brick. But it still retained that weird Realme brand placement along with the autograph of designer Naoto Fukasawa. Coming to the X3 SuperZoom, Realme played it safe, following the usual Realme design with a glossy gradient finish. Thanks to the glass sandwich construction, both phones weigh around the 200-gram mark. The X3 SuperZoom though has a marginally smaller footprint and weighs just 3 grams more. In practice, both these phones feel really good in hand. They are well balanced with easily reachable power and volume buttons. And both phones are also protected by Corning's Gorilla Glass 5 to the front as well as the back. As always, I'll leave this round up to you guys, but personally, I prefer the X3 SuperZoom here. We also have similar size screen on both devices. The major difference though is the 6.5-inch panel on the X2 Pro is AMOLED and runs at 90Hz, while the slightly bigger 6.6-inch one on the X3 SuperZoom is IPS grade with a higher 120Hz refresh rate. Both these panels are Full HD+, but while the X2 Pro comes with a small dewdrop notch, the dual selfie cameras on the X3 SuperZoom take up this pill-shaped cutout to the top left. Coming to the quality of the panels themselves, the X3 SuperZoom does look good, but it can't really match the AMOLED panel on the X2 Pro in terms of punchy colors or inky blacks. The X2 Pro comes with support for HDR10+ and can get brighter than the X3 SuperZoom as well. Now granted, the X3 SuperZoom does feel a bit smoother thanks to the 120Hz refresh rate, but honestly I couldn't tell them apart unless a game was running on them. And given just how much more punchy and contrasty the AMOLED panel looks when it comes to day-to-day stuff like watching movies and YouTube videos, I'd go with the X2 Pro here. So we have two quite different panels on both devices, but when it comes to internals, we are back again on the same territory. Both phones are powered by the same Snapdragon 855 Plus processor. Now, it may be last year's flagship chip from Qualcomm, but it's not lacking in any horsepower. Couple that with Realme UI and everything from opening mails to scrolling down our Instagram feed feels buttery smooth. We have even more of the same when it comes to gaming. The Adreno 640 on the Snapdragon 855 Plus is capable enough to run any game that we manage to throw at it. So popular titles like PUBG or Call of Duty Mobile isn't really an issue for either phone. Realme has also kitted out both phones with a vapor chamber in order to keep the temperatures under check. Now, where the Realme X3 SuperZoom does stand out is in games that support higher refresh rates. The 120Hz refresh rate means enemies are easier to react to even if they're on the periphery of our vision. Taking a look at the rest of the specs, we have 8 or 12 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM combined with 128 or 256 GB of UFS 3.0 storage. So when it comes to performance, I have to give the Realme X3 SuperZoom the edge, thanks to the faster refresh rate that leads to snappier gameplay. Now, the battery situation in here is pretty interesting. The Realme X3 SuperZoom has a 5% larger battery, 4200 mAh compared to 4000 mAh on the Realme X2 Pro. In real life, that doesn't really translate to much better battery life, especially if both phones are running at their highest refresh rates. That being said, both of them lasted me through a single day, so no complaints in that regard. Now when it comes to charging, we have the 50-watt SuperVook flash charger included with the X2 Pro, while the X3 SuperZoom comes with the slower 30-watt dart charger. So while the X2 Pro can go from 0 to 100 in just 35 minutes, the X3 SuperZoom ends up taking about 20 minutes more. That means the X2 Pro takes this round thanks to better charging speeds. Generally, we reserve this portion of the video for software, but honestly both these phones are running the same Realme UI based on top of Android 10. The hardware underneath is super similar, which translates into a consistently snappy lag-free software experience from both devices. So transitioning straight into the sundries then, The OLED screen on the Realme X2 Pro means we have an under-the-display fingerprint scanner in here. When it launched, we praised it as one of the fastest in the market, and while that still holds true, head-to-head, the capacitive side-mounted scanner on the X3 SuperZoom still beats it out in terms of speed. We do have facial recognition on both phones, and they work extremely well. Now, one place where the X2 Pro scores a lot of brownie points is the audio department. We have dual stereo speakers that honestly sound quite a bit better than the single downward firing one on the X3 SuperZoom. We also have a 3.5mm headphone jack as well. Speaking of audio, call quality has been excellent. One thing worth keeping in mind, both are 4G devices. Finally, let's dive into the optics. We have the same primary camera on both phones. It's a 64-megapixel Samsung GW1 sensor paired with an f1.8 lens. As expected, the pictures turned out amazing. Punchy colors, good details, and great dynamic range. There's one easy way to tell them apart though. The X3 SuperZoom always goes for a more vibrant and saturated look. Check out the greens here, and the sky too. Anyway, coming to low light, despite having nightscape, both phones seem to struggle. At a glance, the pictures from the X2 Pro tend to look brighter with vivid colors, but zooming in, we can see that there's a lot of noise and blurry lines in these images. That is because we have ISOs being pushed as high as 18,000 and the shutter speed set at a quarter of a second without any optical image stabilization being built into the primary camera. On the other hand, the X3 SuperZoom keeps the ISOs and shutter speeds low, so we get less artifacting and sharper lines, but the images come out looking darker with washed out colors. Now, Starry Night is something new that we have with the X3 SuperZoom. We also have a Pro Night mode that lets us tinker around with the settings, but both these features need the phone to be kept steady or mounted on a tripod. Up next, we have two very similarly spec'd 8-megapixel ultra-wide snappers. To be fair, the one on the X2 Pro does have a slightly wider f2.2 aperture lens compared to f2.3 on the X3 SuperZoom, but in real-world scenarios, that doesn't really matter. What does matter is that it seems like the X3 SuperZoom ends up with bluer skies but crushed detail in the shadows. In comparison, the snaps from the X2 Pro might look dull at a glance but end up with better details in the darker areas of the picture. Both these phones have telephoto cameras, but as the name suggests, the X3 SuperZoom is equipped with an 8-megapixel periscope telephoto camera that can go up to 5x optical and 60x digital zoom. In comparison, the 13-megapixel telephoto on the X2 Pro can go up to 2x optical and 20x digital. Side by side, starting from 2x, I expected the X2 Pro to perform better here, but they seem pretty much on par. Moving on to 5x, this is where the X3 SuperZoom shines. It's got the sharper picture at 5x as well as 10x. The optical image stabilization also plays a vital role in here, eliminating any shakes. At 20x, the X3 SuperZoom is still holding up strong. And here's one at 60x as well. Coming to the ultra macro shots, the X2 Pro does a lot better here, even though it doesn't have a dedicated sensor for it. The photos come out looking better and sharper than the ones on the X3 SuperZoom. When it comes to selfies, we have the 32-megapixel Sony IMX616 on the X3 SuperZoom going up against the 16-megapixel IMX471 on the X2 Pro. And interestingly, in most snaps, the X2 Pro comes out ahead. Just take a look at the details on Harris's face. Of course, one big advantage here for the X3 SuperZoom is the 8-megapixel ultra-wide selfie snapper that the X2 Pro lacks. Moving on to video capture next, both phones can shoot at 4K 60fps. Since this is being captured by the primary camera, that's same across both phones, we have very similar looking footage. That being said, the X3 SuperZoom does deliver brighter, vibrant colors, compared to which the X2 Pro seems kinda pale. Both phones have Ultra Steady video, but the X3 SuperZoom goes one step ahead with Ultra Steady Max. This makes use of the ultra-wide camera. We also have support for portrait video as well as 960 frames per second super slow motion on both phones. So when it comes to cameras, the X3 SuperZoom edges it out. Not only does it have a few more added functions, but the periscope telephoto camera absolutely blows away the 12-megapixel snapper on the X2 Pro. Time then to talk price. The Realme X2 SuperZoom is available from 28,000 rupees. The X2 Pro costs just a couple thousand more, so 30,000 Indian rupees. Now, for the extra 2,000 rupees, we are getting a 90Hz AMOLED screen, faster charging speeds, dual stereo speakers, a headphone jack, along with a better ultra macro as well as selfie camera. On the other hand, the X3 SuperZoom brings with it that amazing telephoto periscope camera, overall better video and photos from the primary snapper, and a higher 120Hz screen. So both phones have their own pros and cons, but honestly, if the camera features of the X3 SuperZoom isn't that big of a deal for you, then the X2 Pro might just be the better choice. Now that's just my opinion. Now I wanna know yours. So which one of these Realme phones do you prefer and why? Let us know via the comments below. As always, like, share, subscribe and all that. And oh, turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon if you haven't yet. Thanks a lot for watching till the end, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.